Hi, this is Simon Upsall and welcome to another tutorial for Resolve Fusion, and today we're going to be taking a look at this infinity loop effect. So nothing very complicated at all, but there are some interesting little tricks involved in rigging it all up. So let's take a look. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to come to Add Tool, Shape, and we want to look for the S Polygon tool, this one here. Let's look at it in the viewer here. So I'm going to click and drag roughly here, click and drag roughly here, click and drag roughly here, click and drag roughly here. Shift O to close up the shape, and I've got a pretty awful result. Let's turn on the guides so we've got some sort of basic reference here. So I'm going to grab these two top points here, draw around those, E for the point editor, and I want to set this Y value to 0.185. Let's do the opposite with the bottom two, so that Y value negative 0.185. Let's grab these two left-hand points here, and let's sort out the X value here, set that to negative 0.275, draw around these two here and set this to positive 0.275 like that. Okay, so now all we need to do is line up these Bezier handles. What I want to do is take this one and drag it all the way out to the edge of the frame. Same thing with this one. Trying to keep them horizontal like that, using the Shift key as needed to drag this out to the edge of the frame. This one here, drag it out to the edge of the frame. And then this one here, just drag it to the center line. This one here, drag it to the center line. Same thing with this one. And same thing with this one. It's probably not the most perfect infinity loop, but that'll get us going, I think. So now what we need to do is we need to turn off solid here and let's set the border width to something like 0.1. So we're done with the polygon. We're going to add an extrude, 3D extrude. This one here, let's have a look at that. Let's have an extrude depth of 0.1. Let's have a bevel depth of 0.005 and same for the width, 0.005. And I actually want to turn the curve tessellation all the way down, or if you prefer, all the way up. I'm just going to turn it all the way down. Just makes for a slightly better shape in this case. Okay, so here we are. Let's just turn on the 3D lighting so it's a bit easier to see. And we can now turn off that guide as well. So I think what I'm going to do now is just bring in my texture here. And I'll give you a link in the description. It looks like this. Actually, let's switch to the dual viewer so we can see both of these. Let's add a luma keyer to that texture. So then let's crunch in the lows quite a bit like that. I don't know, maybe around 0.5, something like that. Let's add a blin. Now we don't want this to go into the diffuse. We want it to go into the specular intensity like that. So that's going to give us this. And then we want to set the diffuse opacity down to 0.5. Now let's come to this extrude here and just pipe that blin into the material input. And then let's add a 3D merge after this. Let's add a 3D camera to that. Let's add a 3-point light. Let's just turn off the dual viewer, see what we've got here. So we've got a camera and a light. Let's move the camera out to 3 on Z. Let's add a 3D renderer to our merge. Let's have a look at that, see what it's looking like. Let's also add a background and pipe the renderer over the background like that. Let's have a look at it. And oh, the renderer, let's switch to hardware renderer and let's turn on lighting. So I just need to move this light out to something like 2 on Z, and okay, we're starting to look a little bit better now. So let's set this point light to be quite a lot less intense. So let's go for something like 0.5 for that. We might adjust that later on. So now we want a light that follows the shape, our infinity loop. So let's add another 3-point light to this merge. So let's set the fall off type to linear like that, and we'll need to get it to follow the path. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's probably a better way of doing this. I don't really know if there is one. I'm going to add a background node, and then I'm going to add a transform node. And I'm going to rename this transform as path A. And what I want to do is come to the polygon here, the S polygon, I should say. Let's right click here where it says right click for shape animation. Let's remove that, and let's right click again, and then let's publish. Now that polygon path is available to us. We can come to our path A, which, as you remember, was a transform node. We can right click on the center here and add a path. We can come over to modifiers, and down here we can right click where it says right click for shape animation, right click, and we can collect to S polyline, polyline, and value. And now our funny little transform is, well, it's following the path, but we haven't actually set up the displacement yet. So I'm going to remove the path displacement. I'm going to come to 0 on the timeline. I'm going to keyframe the displacement. Let's come forward to, I think, sort of 79 frames. And let's set the displacement to 1. And you can probably see it's kind of following around the path like that. So we need a loop. So let's come to the spline editor. Let's make sure we've got show only selected tool. Select this displacement here. Control A to select both of the points. And then set loop and loop. And you can probably now see that we've got that looping like that. And if we run it, that's looping like that. So all a bit ugly here, but we're not actually going to be using this. We're just going to be using this transform as a reference for the animation of this point light. So let's call this light A. And let's come over to the transform. So what we want to do is we want to add an expression to the X. So add an expression to the X. So we want to reference path A dot center, CENTER dot X minus 0.5. And let's copy that. Control C. Let's add an expression to the Y. Paste that in there. Let's swap the X for a Y like that. Now let's have a look at our result over here. So here's our light. You can probably see it's flying around like that. So what we need to do is actually make it very, very close to the front face of the infinity loop. So I'm just going to do that by just adjusting that Z value till I've got what I want. Let's go for 0.115 and see if that works. Okay, so that's looking like this. What I might come to do is come back to this blin here, the diffuse color, and just reduce that down to a gray like that. Maybe come back to this Lumic here, see if we can just adjust that a little bit more. Something like this possibly. Just crunch in the highs and the lows until you get the look that you want. So I want a second light that's moving around a little bit faster. So I'm going to take my path A, Command C, Command V, F2 to rename it, and let's call it path B. And let's open up the keyframe editor here. Again, show only selected tools. Let's zoom in like that. Let's grab this first one here and set that time value to something like -15, so it's not starting at the same point. And I want it to all go faster, so I'm going to grab this second one here. And instead of 79, let's go for, I don't know, 49 or something. So let's close up the keyframe editor. So we've got path B here, that's good. Let's come to light A, Command C, Command V, pipe that into the merge, F2 to rename it, let's call it light B, and all we need to do is come over to the transform and just adjust this expression, so that's path B instead of path A, path B, like so. You can immediately see we've got those two lights, they're chasing around at different speeds. And really the only thing I want to do now is to add in a floor, so I'm going to select this 3D merge, add a 3D shape like this, F2, let's rename it as floor. So we want to come to the transform, we want an X rotation of -90, And then we want to move it down on Y like that. Let's maybe go for, I don't know, yeah, negative 0.3 is probably pretty good. Come back over to the controls, set the size to 20. Now it's all much too bright, so let's come to the material, the diffuse, and bring it way down like that. Let's also just set the opacity to 0.5. I mean, this is not necessarily the best way of doing it, but it's a kind of quick and easy way of getting that lighting to look the way I want it to, bearing in mind we're compositing this over black at the end. So there you go, that is pretty much it. Then you can do whatever you want with the camera move. Let's have maybe 360 for the duration. Let's come to the camera. What I want to do is I want to select the X pivot, sorry, the Z, what did I say? I meant to say the Z pivot. Add an expression, pick whip the Z translation, and then add a negative sign to the front of that expression. That'll just help us with the rotation. So let's have a start value of 1.5 on Z. Keyframe it. Let's keyframe the Y rotation. Let's have maybe negative 30 for that. Let's come to the end. Let's set the Y rotation to 5, and let's set the Z position to 3. So basically quite a simple move back like that. And let's just select our merge here. Let's add a soft glow. Let's take a look at that. All much too much. So let's set the blend to 0.2. Let's open up the color scale and maybe just have a blue scale of 1.2, something like that. Anyway, loads of fun you can have now with customizing it to the way you want. I've shown you all the basics of the idea. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.